Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Unite Students Spring Festival. My name is Anna Richardson, and certainly on my screen, above me, is leadership coach and therapist, and also my very good friend and colleague, Gareth Ogden. And together,
Hello.
We co-founded the online well-being service called Mindbox, which I'm really hoping that you guys will check out at the end of this session. Now, I know that you've had a whole host of events since the festival started on Monday, but we are the very first of your well-being sessions. So it's a real pleasure to be here, and we're very excited to be seeing you this evening. And we want to share our insights on how best to manage your mental health, our collective mental health during these very challenging times. It's been a hell of a year, I think it's fair to say. And I can certainly say that in one way or another, all of us have been affected by it. So, what can you expect from this evening's session? We are going to be taking an in-depth look at how the mind works, specifically with Gareth, how best to manage your anxiety and your stress, which you may be experiencing at the moment, as well as giving you some positive tips on maintaining mental well-being for you or for anybody around you who might be struggling. Just to give you the heads up as well, we're also going to be doing some live relaxation hypnotherapy, which is fantastic. So if you're keen to enjoy that, then all I'd say is just make sure in about 30 minutes that you're somewhere quiet and warm, and that you're not going to get disturbed by the Amazon delivery coming to your door or Just Eat or whatever it happens to be, which is probably what's going to happen to me in about 10 minutes. There's also going to be a Q&A at the end of the session. So what Gaz and I like to say is please do ask us some questions. We will be responding to those. So feel free throughout this to just ping your questions to us, and we'll come to those at the end. Now, in the meantime, in case you're wondering, hang on a minute, what are you doing on this? You're the girl from Naked Attraction. You spend your time looking at naked bodies. What do you know about therapy and about mental health? Well, you might just be a little bit surprised, because myself and my very anxious family have had to struggle with significant mental health challenges over the years, and that includes, very sadly, suicide, nervous breakdown. My mother had a nervous breakdown about 3 years ago, OCD, anxiety and depression. I've had years of therapy myself, so I really do understand how it feels to feel out of control and nervous and stressed and depressed. And it's because of those experiences that I decided to spend a year, whilst also working in television, training as a cognitive hypnotherapist. I'm now fully qualified, although my career is TV. I wanted to understand the mind better, how better to manage my own mind, but also how to pass on that learning so that I could help other people as well, which is why we're here tonight. But I think it's fair to say that the real expert in the room is that handsome devil above me, Gareth Ogden. Hello, hello, hello. So, Gaz, I just wanted to ask you first. I mean, I've known you.
What an intro.
What an intro. I've known you for a while, obviously. Actually, I wanted to ask you, because I don't think I've ever asked you this. What brought you to therapy in the first place? Why did you decide to train? Because you're a young'un at the end of the day. So I'm just wondering whether you're a fellow sufferer, whether you've struggled with anxiety at all.
Yeah, I guess I was at the time a younger member of the community, and perhaps I'd like to think I still am on the younger side of the group. But yeah, we aren't we all fellow sufferers? I think one of the golden rules of this game we call life is that everyone is fighting a battle that no one knows anything about. And I think that's a particularly important point when we think about this notion of being kind and certainly being charitable about our assessments of other people's behavior. So yeah, I was always really interested in people. But if I'm honest, when I was coming to the end of my sixth form days, as much as I was interested in this topic that was psychology, for me, it seemed like a topic that was reserved only for clever people. And I had a real hang up about this. Like it was, for me, only people who were super academic and really clever would study this field and get involved in it. And it wasn't until a couple of years later, I actually, when I sort of got into the working world at 19, 20, I was working actually in a call center, and they asked me whether I would do some training for these call center agents. So I really got into this whole corporate training thing, but became absolutely obsessed with this idea of performance. So I noticed early on that there were these strange patterns of behavior that you saw amongst those who went on to be successful and those who were kind of blocked by something. And so I got really into it. I read everything that I could read. And at about 20, I was maybe 2021, and I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to head down to London and I'm going to learn how to do this. And then I emerged later, two or so years later, and then I set up my practice. And since then, I was really just fusing these two disciplines together. I was, of course, working one-to-one in the mental health space, working a lot with anxieties. And then I was colliding that with my work in the corporate space, which then later became very much focused on managers and leaders and the role that they play in really elevating people and bringing out their best. And now really much of my work is really heavily, almost intensely focused on managers and leaders in businesses really over the world. I'm quite lucky. I get to work with people all over the place. Yeah.
Well, you're really passionate. I know you're passionate about performance and actually passionate about getting the best out of people. But you have been in private practice as well for around the last 12 years, helping people with their mental health. What would you say are the most sort of common mental health problems? And I'm thinking as well about the fact that we've had such a terrible year and how the pandemic may have affected that, because I've noticed more people than ever really struggling. So what would you say are the most common complaints that you see?
Yeah, so there are some real standout ones that I've got to say, and some of, as you might expect, of you can almost directly link to isolation and the pandemic. So with anxiety, if we take that, which is a term that actually collectively describes a lot of different types of mental health issues, roughly speaking, you can place anxieties in one of two groups, and these groups also overlap. So you've got the physical anxieties and you have the emotional anxieties. So in the physical group, this includes things like health anxieties. Now, again, unsurprisingly, we've seen a real surge in health anxieties, which is typically characterized by a kind of paranoia, really, that we might have something more wrong with us than is actually the case. And I'll put my hand up here, right? I have woken up on a morning with a slightly scratchy throat and thought, maybe I need to check my will and tell my kids I love them. I've got it. It's going to get me. I'm going to be one of the 2%. And, and I've been there, and I've got, the sort of backdrop of all of my own training. So I can very easily see why that would also be an issue across the sort of general population. On the emotional side of the scale, this specifically includes social anxieties. So a kind of fear of judgment and a fear of assessment. And again, it sort of makes sense, doesn't it, that we've been isolated for so long and we've found protection in our own little bubbles, that the idea of stepping outside of that now can be quite daunting for people. In fact, one of my clients the other day was saying that a friend of hers had messaged when we were allowed out into the gardens, like the lighter restrictions, and a friend of hers had just messaged her and said, "Oh, great news! I'm heading round to yours on Friday. I'm going to bring a bottle of fizz, and we'll have a really good catch up." And she said, obviously, she read the message and responded, "Yes, that's great," but inside she was absolutely daunted by it. And this was like a best friend, and she's going, "I don't know why, but I was sort of uncomfortable with the idea of someone coming into my space and like, what are we going to talk about? Like, have I forgotten how to socialize?" So I find that really interesting. So certainly for me, in my experience, health anxiety is absolutely on the rise, or has been. If we were to collectively measure across the nation, without a doubt, that's gone up a few clicks. Social anxiety also, but then there's one that is really sort of sat in the middle of these two key areas, which is a surface label, but we can dig into that, and it's a financial anxiety. It's a fear of the future and the uncertainty that surrounds. How am I going to now navigate when the industry that I was perhaps a part of is no longer appearing in the way that it was? You know, if you were in the arts, for example, I mean, you're in this group of people who are going, I think my industry has almost changed forever at this point, yeah. Right? So where's my place in this new world and everything? So yeah, in answer to the question, those three absolutely clear in my mind. We're seeing a lot more cases of this, and it really is pouring out of people's language. You know, whether someone calls it a problem or not, it's in our vocabulary. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I've noticed myself amongst my friend group and my family, actually, and I'm sure that people watching, I'd be very interested to know whether you guys have also experienced this within your own colleagues and your friendship group as well. That, you know, I've got members of my family who are saying, oh no, I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to come round and see. I'm uncomfortable. Yeah. Or my sister-in-law had to go back to work, and she was saying, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. So I'm recognizing that anxiety in other people, whereas I'm desperate to get out. I can see that other people are actually now, with that isolation, they've become accustomed to it, and they're very worried about it. Obviously, definitely. I'm conscious of the fact that the group that we're speaking to this evening are a younger generation, very late teens, maybe around 20. Obviously, we're talking to students, so 19, 20, 21. Do you think that generation are experiencing more mental health issues than, say, our generation? Do you think that might be a relevant and prevalent thing?
Well, yeah. Actually, there is some research on this. There's not a huge amount, interestingly enough, but there's quite a lot that has come out of the US in the last 10 or so years. We are seeing from 2007, we're seeing a rise in anxiety disorders amongst young people and adolescents. We're seeing this in the data. Around 20%, it appears, from 2007 onwards. So it does, you know, if you were to compare it with our generation, as in when we were kind of coming up through that time, there is a disparity in the data. You can see a difference as to what that's about. You know, we can maybe perhaps get into that, but it's interesting nonetheless.
What do you think the reason is? And again, I'm interested to hear from people watching. What do you think that reason is? Is it to do with social media? Is it to do with expectation? What's it to do with?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the risk of being bashing social media, which I know is one of the things that tends to come up, and I don't want to seem as though that I'm just kind of defaulting there because everyone else does, but without a doubt, we are and will continue to pay a price for the way in which we have adapted our social behaviors. And one of the more obvious trends that has emerged out of the kind of era of social media is this urge to compare and the importance of how we compare as that stacks up to those around us. So, you know, social media is a show reel, isn't it? I mean, Instagram is designed in this way. It is a show reel. It is all of your best bits for the most part. You know, there are perhaps exceptions to this, but most people are looking at the best version that you can possibly portray. And the apps also encourage you to create more artificial versions. You know, the fact that there is literally a button on my new phone which makes me look great. You know, and it's hard not to press the button as well. Like when you know it's there and you think, right, I can just hit this button and my face is going to take a slightly nicer shape and, you know, smooth my skin.
Is it on now?
Right. So
is it on now?
Yeah.
Press that button.
Yeah. Can you tell? Yeah. And that's, well, I mean, you know, the next thing surely will be a live version of this. I can imagine Zoom adding this as a feature, you know, so people just crawling out of bed in the morning and hitting the pretty button. And then, you know, as far as all their colleagues are concerned, they just look awesome. So you know, to me, you know, as a therapist, and I'm speaking partly from intuition here, we can't get away with this. We're not going to get away with an emerging cultural trend that is looking from the outside in to everyone else's seemingly perfect life, and comparing it with our own. And this is not, we could say this is it just young people? I think this is also prevalent amongst those in their sort of mid-30s, especially, because they're looking at people who they went to school with, and they're going, their life looks better than mine does right now. I must have screwed up somewhere.
Yeah.
So that we see this in that the social anxiety I talked before, and how people describe the feelings that they've got, and how they might perhaps feel inferior. The phrase imposter syndrome. This was a very niche term 10 years ago when I first came across it. It is now in everyone's vocabulary. It's like we all know and accept that most of us have it, right? And you can't tell me that has nothing to do with social media. It must do.
I'm interested to know a little bit more about how the mind works, because I think at the end of the day, people watching are going to want to understand how their own minds work, how they can manage their stress and anxiety. Now, as I understand it, we all do stress in a very different way. We each have our own way of doing it. So can you just clarify that a little bit, and just tell us a little bit more about how our minds function?
Yeah, so biologically speaking, the same sort of stuff is going on. So chemically speaking, stress, the reaction that is the stress response is quite similar, but without a doubt, our experience of it is very, very different. And you can prove this with your own basic experiment, right? You can just ask 5 of your friends, what's stress like for you? How do you know you've got it? Where do you feel it? Point to a place in your body where you notice it the most. You ask any of these questions, you get a whole variety of answers. And then if you ask someone, like, if it had a shape, what shape would it be? You ask these questions, we call these submodalities in therapy. You ask those questions, people come up with, I love these questions because people come up with all kinds of like weird and wonderful ways of giving it a metaphor. So yeah, we know that people experience it differently. And actually, that's quite a useful resource in therapy, because part of the work that we do is to help uncover how someone experiences it in order to be able to affect that. So we know then where to sort of tap. So if I try and really condense many years of research in this field to something that I think is, easy to explain in a couple of minutes, what I would say is that at any given moment, we are just consuming information from our environment, lots and lots of individual pieces of information. And that information is feeding our next move. Like if you imagine there's a kind of mechanism going, what should I do next? It's taking all of this information in. The first consideration it makes is, who am I supposed to be in this moment? And that really is a question of identity. We often think of ourselves as just being one person, right? Because we have a version of ourselves we sort of relate to. But it's certainly true when people say there's a million different versions of you and they just exist in the minds of everyone around you. This is really true. And also, if I were to say, well, are you the same person when you go home to your parents' house versus when you're out with your friends, when you socialize or whatever? And most people would go, well, no, actually, it's a slightly different side of me. So we do associate with these different versions. So that's the first thing, is who you're supposed to be right now. What we're then doing is we're taking information about what is going on, and we're throwing it back. We throw it right back into our past, into our experiences. And we're asking ourselves, how has this worked out for me before? What do my experiences tell me about this moment and what I should do next? And then we throw that idea forward into the future. This is one of the things that separates us from many of the animal kingdom, is we make predictions. We paint a picture about how something should go based on our experiences and based on the environment we're in. And then that picture we evaluate, is this something that I like the look of, or is this something I don't like the look of? And that at its, in its most simple form, is what then drives the feeling, which then drives the behavior. So perhaps if I just give you a quick example of this.
Yeah.
You are in a situation where you become aware of an upcoming exam. That is the information that is coming in. And we go tracking back for all of my exam experiences.
I'm already anxious. Right? I'm not starting an exam.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this is the thing. So one of the things that the brain does, which is totally not helpful, is it puts a little beacon on the negative experiences, because they seem to be the ones that taught us valuable lessons. And you see this pattern certainly amongst those who are anxious. It's sort of the pattern fulfills itself. So the ones that have got beacons on, you're like, yeah, I remember that time when I did this, and that time when I remember hyperventilating a little bit, and that time where, I felt like I was going to be sick, and I remember the time where I failed one, like I screwed one up, and all, so all of these are kind of swimming around, and then we throw it forward, and here's another thing we do. So once we've collected all those and we've thrown it forward, there's a thing that in therapy we call catastrophic thinking, and it's where it doesn't end with just the immediate sort of stimulus. So it doesn't end with, what does it look like my upcoming exam? We go one step further and we say, what would it look like if I failed the exam? Well, I might not pass the course. What might happen if I don't pass the course? Oh, well, I won't get a job, and then I'll end up on the street.
And then my life is over. Yeah.
Before, it's insane. Yeah, like my life is over. And it sounds like we can almost make fun of that chain of thinking. But this is this struggle is real. I mean, a lot of people are well-versed catastrophic thinkers. Like, they can go from something to like, so here and now, how has this worked out for me before? Throw it out to the future, paint a picture. Do I like it? And this is the pleasure pain principle. Do I move towards it because I like the look of it, or do I move away from it because I don't like the look of it? So that's the kind of the core piece that I think is useful to know.
And also, I think it might be worth just explaining a little bit about the fight, flight, or freeze response, because again, we do react to stress and anxiety in different ways, and it tends to be those three sort of principles, doesn't it?
Oh, totally, yeah. So all of our reactions can be placed in one of those three categories. We've heard of fight, flight, or freeze before. Most of us know what it is. Perhaps freeze is not as commonly known, but I'll explain what that is. But when we've painted this picture, and assuming we've painted a negative one and we don't like the look of it, when that gets back to the control booth, we go, okay, we've got three options here, and the three options sit within one of these categories. So we can go against it. So we battle down whatever that might be. So sometimes when I talk about anxiety, I open the session by saying, have you ever? And then I give these kind of examples of, one of the ones that I say is, have you ever been like infuriated by something that was just inconsequential? Like, it's not that important, but you just got really wound up about it. I remember doing that one time, and someone said, yeah, because I couldn't get my hair right this morning. And like, she was still annoyed about it. It was really funny. It's like, my straighteners wouldn't work. And I thought, well, you're still carrying this, aren't you, right now? Like, I can tell. And so that's that. That is classic fight response. Is anger at something is a fight response, right? It's a primitive emotional reaction. The flight response can come in a few forms, but one of the ways we best describe this is procrastination, which is to just put something off. Yeah. Something else is always more important. And if you had exam nerves, procrastination would probably show up as like not revising. Just got I'll do it later. You just don't really want to kind of face up to it, because every time you open the book, you think, this is not going in, I'm going to fail and my life will be over, and all that. And then the freeze response, from an evolutionary point of view, this seems to stem from this idea that, if we go really primitive on this, there may have been moments in our primitive survival where inactivity, as in doing nothing, was our best chance of surviving a situation, as in almost like playing dead. That's where the thinking comes from, is, in a predatory situation, there are times where playing dead actually was the thing that kept you alive. And it seems biologically, it seems to be almost like a shutdown of the sympathetic nervous system, is where it just goes, okay, I'm gonna just switch everything off right now. This might give you a chance. Who knows? You could come out of this alive, right? So this is with us, and freeze is. So the best example of freeze you see is when someone comes out of a perhaps high pressure, they were put on the spot and they go, I wish I'd have said that. Why didn't I say that? Why did that thing not come to my mind? Maybe it was an interview, maybe it was an application, or just really any time where you've got to be on point, and it was as if there was a part of your brain conspiring against you for doing it. And that is classic freezes. My mind went blank.
Yeah.
Is freeze. Yeah.
So all fear responses basically, and we learn to behave in a particular way, particularly given our past experiences. So as you say, our mind tracks back to something similar, and that's where we learn our responses more often than not, actually, from our parents as well. The all important the all important question, Gaz, is stress, anxiety, low grade depression. What can we do about it?
Yeah, there's a big question, right? So I'll try and be as succinct as possible. I'm kind of conscious of time, but so there's two things I'll talk about, which I think in the time that we've got might really help some people. The first is, when we think about anxiety and being in the grip of it, people talk about it sort of gripping and capturing you, seizing you in a moment. One of the really effective ways of just managing that is through being present. And I know that idea is not new to many people, but I'll explain more about what that means. Being present or grounding is really a moment where you just, so when I talked before about we go here and now, we track back and we throw forward. Being present is basically disrupting that flow. So instead of going back and forward and doing this whole thing, is we go, right, what about the here and now? And it's a strange thing, and I really encourage anyone to try it. It's a strange thing to inspect an emotion, to almost go into it and start to ask, why is that? Why do I feel angry about this? Where is that anger coming from? Where do I feel it? Does it have some characteristics? And I defy anyone in exploring an emotion and just going, what is this like in this moment? I defy anyone to hold on to it for very long. It's a strange thing. And it works particularly well with road rage, by the way. If you ask yourself, what went wrong with their day for them to get annoyed at me on this road, rather than, I don't deserve for someone to swear at me, so I'm going to get angry. I do the opposite. I go, what's gone wrong with you today? And you can really sort of cut it off at the pass in some cases. So this idea of being present and in a moment and just asking yourself, where is this feeling? Where is it coming from? And is it helpful, right? Where is it coming from? Is it helpful? And just run through this in a moment, become aware of your environment, and that as an initial step can really help just disrupt what would be the sort of the process of catastrophic thinking, which goes beyond it. Now, the second thing I would say is, and this is really kind of a logical point based on what I've described already, we know now, just based on what I was talking about before, that most anxieties, well, in fact, all anxieties are the fear of prospect. You're never nervous or anxious about what's happening now. You're only ever nervous or anxious about the prospect of something happening. So it's what could happen, right? So if we think about it like that we've gone backwards, we've thrown it forwards, and then we've experienced an emotion. There's a stubborn fact about this, and that is, all of the things you're anxious about, you've just made up. You have made them up, right? So, and the thing is, we know this, right? Positive emotions work in a similar way. When we feel excited about a holiday, we're making up the holiday. Like, we don't know how.
Exactly. I think it's really important to say thoughts are not facts.
It's 100%, right? So we know when we're excited about a holiday, we have no idea how it's going to go, but we have so many heavily emotionally charged positive holiday experiences that when we go tracking back, that's what we're pulling through. But it works the same way. So when negative experiences are simulations, they're ideas that we've just made up. Now, here's another thing to just run. It's a little thought experiment. Ask yourself, how many, roughly speaking, what percentage of the things that you have worried about have come true? And if you're critical about this question, most people are in single digits at best, right? 5% of the things that you worry about. You know, some people who are chronic worriers, you know, would say probably 1% of the things. So you put those two things together, right? And the two things are worried about is based on something you've just made, and most of what you worry about never happens, right? So I know that's a very logical way of looking at it, and some people go, yeah, but I'm feeling it. What I would encourage you to do is really hold both of those solutions in each hand. Is be present, be current and in the moment, explore it. When you've got it, when you've been able to drain most of the emotion out, or at least what's driving you to feel concerned, then take yourself through this thought of, is that idea real? Is it based on anything true? Is it likely to come true? And of course, the answer to all of those questions will be no. So, you know, without going into a whole seminar of anxiety management, those two things in themselves, I think, are useful for a lot of people.
Very, very helpful. Very helpful. I'm conscious of time because we're about halfway through. We've got some fantastic questions through, by the way. And what I'm going to do is, I'm just wondering whether to throw some of these out now, Gaz, or whether to do them.
Okay, should we see if there's any that we can do quickly?
Well, do you know what? Because I was going to say to you, how should we support somebody who may be struggling? And funnily enough, we do have a question here, which is, my friend is really anxious and I don't know what to say. She seems okay, but then says she's anxious. I think this is really important, that if you're feeling okay, but you've got a friend that's going, I'm really struggling.
Yeah.
How can we best support somebody?
Yeah. So this is a great question, right? Because I get this a lot, and it's not uncommon also in the work that I do, where I have relatives just calling me up saying, I know you're working with this person who, you know, son, daughter, whoever. Can I just tell you like how it's going and what I'm seeing? And it's quite tricky for me in that situation, because obviously their confidentiality is protected and all of this. But I usually, there's a few things that I say to family members who are trying to be supportive, which I think is great, by the way. The first is to really fight an impulse that we have to be in the business of advice. It's such an easy thing to do, to go, I know what you mean, and this is what you need to do. I'll tell you what you want to do. And because I'll tell you where that goes. It almost always goes, the person who's hearing it goes, you don't know what I mean, because you're not me. and that's not going to work for me. So they don't really see it through. And then the person who's given the advice then sees them not taking their advice, and they interpret that as not listening or not taking help. And then the relationship sort of breaks down because their expectations are not met. So that, for me, is the most almost common, that is the route that all of these things take, which doesn't get you anywhere. So first and foremost, I say to family members, resist the urge to get in the business of advice, right? And you can do that by, I think I even started with this, is just keep in mind that everyone is fighting a battle that no one knows anything about. And even when you can get into dialogue with someone, there's probably more to it than you'll ever know. So you the role that you're playing in this case is one of support and one that encourages a dialogue. The best thing that you can do for someone who's suffering is to get them, or encourage them as gently and as effectively as possible, to start to talk more and more about their experience. And getting into the advice game really sort of stops that. So impartiality, as in not taking a side, and freeing yourself of any instinct to judge, are the two really important things that are going to stop you getting in the business of advice. And conversationally, what I always say is, don't let yourself say anything unless it's another question. I'm okay with someone saying that must be difficult, which is still kind of like a question, but I'm all right with that. But if you can almost try this yourself, is you get into this discussion, how things been going, and you get some sort of movement. If you can start to coax and encourage some openness and some honesty about it, your job in that space is to set the table to go, you can carry on talking and I'll carry on listening, and I'm with you on this. And that is the most inviting way for someone to give up more. And sorry, I just say one really quick thing. There was a thing I read many years ago, and it was actually came from corporate coaching space, and they called this the lamppost effect. And it's based on this idea that actually you would be better talking to a lamppost than talking to someone who's going to try and give you advice. And that's just because you're saying a lot of these things out loud. So you'd be surprised how therapeutic it is for someone to externalize their thinking. So the hallmark of success here is to encourage external thinking.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So basically you're creating a safe space, yes, and a safe environment, yeah, for your friend to actually say, this is how I feel. And they are vocalizing their inner world.
Yeah,
as a support system, you are there to listen and to encourage and support, basically, rather than offering advice and going, well, you should do this. Just going, I'm here for you. Talk to me at any time. Okay, well, look, again, we've only got 25 minutes left. Talking of support, I think that we should be moving into our live hypnosis.
Let's do it.
So let's do it. I am going to encourage everybody that would like to do this. Just take a minute just to get yourselves comfy. Make sure you're not going to be disturbed. Just maybe lie down could really, really help. Or sit as if you're going to meditate. But lying down can be great. If you are going to lie down, then just try and pop a little duvet or a blanket or something over you, because sometimes you get a little bit cold when you're going into this sort of daydreamy state. So,
can I just say one last thing, super quick, before you get into it. For those of you that have not got any experience of hypnotherapy or the idea of trance states, I just want to dispel a few myths here. The state that you would experience through this process is really similar to a kind of daydream state. So it's actually the opposite of what a lot of people think it is. People think it's a kind of deep sleep, when in reality it's an intense focus, right? But the experience of it is often very relaxing. It's 100% safe. Like, there's absolutely no risk whatsoever that you won't wake up. The whole history of stage hypnosis has not done us any favors here, right? But most of that is nonsense, by the way. But one thing I would just say is that, given that this can induce a state of intense focus and concentration and relaxation, it's not a good idea to do this if your immediate attention is required elsewhere. So if you've got like a pan on the hob or something like that, now would be a good time to switch it off. If you've got kids in the space, that I'm not sure where you guys are, but if you've got little brothers and sisters and so on, or you're babysitting, again, just take some care there. You get into a safe environment where your attention isn't needed elsewhere for the next sort of 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay. So thank you. That was a sort of like being on an aeroplane where it's like the
yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm going to start. So if you guys are lying down and you're safe, Owen, I'm going to ask if you could blank my screen, possibly. I don't know if you're still able to see me. It's blank. That's lovely. Okay. So whenever you're ready, I want you to roll your eyes up and just look at your eyebrows. Now, you might just feel your eyes just straining a little bit, and that's okay. And then I just want you to breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Just keep your eyes, look at your eyebrows. And on that third breath, just let your eyelids close right down. Breathe in and out. And as they close and relax, just allow a drifting, floating feeling to develop in your body. You don't need to try and make it happen. Just think of it happening. Imagine it. And just feel it like a wave of relaxation washing over your body, in whatever way you would imagine it, going from your head all the way down to your toes. So you can begin to find a level of relaxation deeper than before, so that this wave of comfortable quietness, passing right through your body, can help you to let go even further, while you let your mind wander about what it might feel like to listen and relax. And what's interesting about the feeling of relaxation is that everyone tends to experience it in a slightly different way. So much so that you could say that every way is the right way to let your breathing sink a little deeper into the chest, as you find yourself a comfortable position to imagine what it might feel like to notice your feeling of relaxation. And imagine if that feeling had some sort of form or appearance. What would it look like? Maybe it could be a shape or even have a colour. Or perhaps there's a sound associated with it. And if you could allow yourself to think about that, you could probably imagine that feeling move, or even enter your body at the very top of your head, gradually moving down through the forehead, allowing all of the muscles it comes into contact with to relax. The eyes and face, allowing even the tiny muscles around your eyes to begin to let go. And each breath can let that feeling sink a little deeper, down through the neck, so that your head can rest in a position you find more comfortable than before. And it's okay if your mind starts to drift in and out of the words you hear, because it's okay for that feeling to drop further down, deeper, more relaxing, into the chest and down the arms, as you continue to drift a little deeper, sinking through your stomach. And it's good to notice just how much more relaxed you are than you were before. And when you're ready to go further, the feeling can also sink down into your legs, so you can begin to find a level of relaxation deeper than before. Perhaps even deeper than a time when you felt completely relaxed, so that this wave of comfortable quietness, passing right through your body, can reach the bottom of your feet. And just give yourself a moment to enjoy how relaxed you're feeling in this moment. And as you continue to just drift and relax even further than before, noticing your breathing sink deeper into the chest, you can wonder for a moment whether your unconscious mind has waited up until now to allow you to listen to this and start then continue to change. And whether you'll begin to notice differences in yourself this week or the next, in the way that you're aware of, less and less, the symptoms of anxiety you used to have, as your mind begins to continue to break down the connections your memories had with the feelings of anxiety you've had up until now. Because it's interesting to realise that the feelings you have noticed up until now are actually a sign that your mind is working exactly how it should do, in order to keep you safe from what it thinks are physical and emotional threats. But what can be different from now or later is that it can recalibrate, relearn, re-understand with each time you listen at an unconscious level. Because during the time that you listen to my words, you will develop a new and greater self-awareness, a level of awareness that gives you a fresh and empowering sense of control, which means that in this state, it's almost as if you can reach into your mind and change the way it's working, altering the way it tells your body to respond in those situations, so that instead of anxiety, you might notice calm confidence, or perhaps even nothing at all, which means it might not be until later, looking back, that you realise the problem you used to have just isn't there anymore, or that you are calmer, more relaxed, now and later, because of the way your mind is changing as you listen to this. And let those words connect with you so that you can feel calmer and more relaxed. Now, I know this can mean different things to different people, so I'd like you to think about what it means to you. And think about what other words you can say to yourself which make you feel better. Say them in your mind now. And as you form this new habit of feeling calmer and more relaxed, you will begin to find those feelings are there when you look, listen, and feel, most or all of the time. And this means that before long, you might be surprised to find out how much more time passes between the moments when you notice your old problem, allowing for hours or even days to pass without ever realizing it even existed. Because the funny thing about time is that it only really exists in our mind. We all perceive it differently, in the same way that we remember to forget, or even forget to remember what it was when you last experienced it. And you can be amazed at how this new realization of feeling more calm and relaxed for longer periods of time each day can positively impact other parts of your life, so that you can find yourself noticing opportunities that have a sudden appeal unlike before, which means that you might even feel compelled to challenge yourself in ways that you wouldn't have in the past, so that your focus shifts to recognizing all of the aspects of a future event that are positive to you. which makes them interesting and exciting, because that's what will make the difference. That's when you can realize the true potential in you. So that over the days or weeks that pass, it almost becomes normal to imagine how well a situation could unfold, which has an amazing effect on your behavior, where you can find yourself looking, sounding, and even talking in ways that, for you, mean that you are moving further away from the old, anxious version of yourself towards the person you want to be instead. So just imagine that for a second. Imagine what it would feel like to have those qualities. To recognize those moments when you overcame your old problem, as slight as it may be. Imagine who you would be if you were free from anxiety. Imagine who you are, free from anxiety. And only you know what being free feels like. What it is that you're looking for that means anxiety doesn't happen. For some, it's a noticeable feeling of calmness. But for others, it's simply the absence of a feeling, a neutral nothingness which passes over without you even noticing. Whatever it might be, that is success to you. Now, I'm not sure what it will be that you notice first about the way that you're thinking and feeling differently. But I do know that you want to overcome this. And your desire for change is strong enough to ignite a part of you that is focused on creating a better life for you. A life with fewer emotional restrictions. A life where every possibility presents an opportunity. A life where you just can't help but pursue what you truly want and what makes you happy. And this transformation can begin sooner than you might think. So it's up to you to take the time to realize and celebrate the moments when you make progress, however big or small the difference. Because anxiety is like a skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And for that to be true, it must work the other way around, which means the more times you overcome it, the easier it becomes to be free from it. With each and every day that passes, you're building an even stronger mechanism to combat this old problem, leaving the door open for you to invest your energy into a positive aspect of your life, which will help you grow and develop to be more of that person you want to be. So just think for a second about the endless possibilities of a calmer, more composed you, realizing a control you have, which has been lying beneath the surface until now. It's yours to take. And you can tell yourself that in a way where others might notice as well. So it's exciting to look forward to when that moment comes. And you can realize just how far you've come. So looking forward now can be so much easier. To start to build an idea of a more positive future. You know now that our behavior is made up of information our brain takes from the current situation, our past experiences, and how we imagine something will unfold. which for you can be enough to get better with each day at coming to expect different outcomes. And you may or may not even be aware at a conscious level, but that's okay, because your unconscious mind will let you know, in whichever way it needs to, that you have become better at dealing with the situations with a new, fresh, and empowering sense of control. The situations that used to be connected to the problem you once had. Now is your time. A time for your unconscious mind to drive you towards what you want and get behind your intention. So for the next few minutes, I'd like you to take yourself out to a time in the future that would have once been connected to the problem you used to have. And notice all the things about you that have changed. All the things that make the difference. The way you're now relaxing. The ways you're thinking differently. How you're feeling differently. All the differences that make the difference. And as you do, just imagine going down and connecting with yourself and that event. To notice whatever it is that lets you know you're better. Immersing yourself in every aspect of it so it feels as real as you can make it. Because it's a little known fact that the process through which our brain goes in order to imagine a future event is almost the same as the one it takes to recall a past memory. This means that in many ways, our brain recognizes them both as being as real as each other. Our idea of the future is important because our lives are what our thoughts make it. So I'd like to ask your unconscious mind to remember those differences in the future you. Take them and bring them all the way back to now. So that from today, you already have everything you need to be different in the future. Now. So all I have to do to give your unconscious the time it needs, to take from my words whatever impacts you most, whatever helps you, that enables you to move forward stronger than before. So that as it becomes normal, you can enjoy the certainty of just what it is that you can achieve in the time that it takes for me to count from 5 to 1. Each number will also give you a little more awareness of the position of your body, the room that you're in. So that as I begin to count up, you can notice the feelings in your feet on 5. Traveling up through the legs as I say 4. Allowing your fingers to move as I say 3. And with 2, just noticing your breathing as your eyes can open, feeling calm and comfortable on 1.
right? And because you knew the answer and someone was, it could have been in a lesson or over a web chat, you might have let someone in front of you at the till at Lidl, right? It could be something like that. But anything where at the end of the day, you can sit and reflect on it and just consider how you added some value and what you can essentially appreciate about yourself based on the value that you added. And what you're doing here is, so here's what will happen. The first time you do it, it'll be slightly irritating because you'll be thinking, I can't think of anything. I don't know what that was, but persevere and try to come up with at least one, go for three. And with each day that you do this, you'll get better at, first of all, identifying these moments, right? So you're retuning the thought habit. And the second thing that'll happen is you'll start to create moments for yourself during the day, because in your mind, you think, well, I'm just going to hack it. I'll do something which I can write about later. Now you go ahead and do that because you're essentially validating the value, right? So that's what I'd suggest to that person is reprogramming, retraining your brain, as you've put it, is about reinforcing positive thought habits in this case, and you can do that with that journaling exercise. The other question I want to answer is there's actually two. One of them is I'm used to socializing online, but I'm nervous of meeting people. And then someone else has said, I'm really nervous about going back to university seminars where there's going to be a lot of people. How can I handle this? So I think it's the same. I think it's probably the same answer I could give. Now, one of the things that we do when in our, I'm going to call this a problem state. This is the term that we use when someone describes a thing they're locked into. One of the things we do is something we refer to as positive and negative hallucinations. So what this means, a positive hallucination is you essentially project something in that isn't really there. So you notice something more, you're kind of adding something in. And a negative one is the opposite of that. It's where you don't see something. So with social anxiety, often what we're doing is the simulation we're running in the future is a fear of judgment. And at a more detailed level, we're usually thinking about things like, I don't want to say something that sounds stupid. I don't want to end up being the person in the room who people think is, a bit odd or not quite well integrated. I don't want to look like the person who's on my own, those things, right? And because we're running a simulation of all of these things we can see in our environment that validate us being the weird loner, right? So here's the question that I've got for you is, how do you know when someone in a social exchange is engaged in their conversation with you? How do you know, right? And I want you to think about that carefully. And I'll just give an example of the kind of answers that I might get to that question. So someone might say, well, they might smile whilst I'm talking. They might laugh a little bit at some of the things that I've said. They might ask me a question, right? So those three things I'll take. So you're telling me, when someone's engaged in the discussion, when it's a friendly environment, when you can address someone, you see smiles, there's a little bit of laughter, maybe not, full raucous laughter, but just a little bit conversationally. And then someone might ask you questions. Then what I would say is, those are the three things I'm going to get you to pay most attention to. So when you're out, rather than positively hallucinating all of the facial expressions that show that you're saying something that's wrong or a little bit weird, is in your mind, you go, look for laughs, look for smiles, and look for questions. And you set yourself on that little mission, right? And when you do that, I can guarantee that there's a thing we refer to as All's law, which is what the seeker seeks, the prover proves. So if I tell you I've hidden a penny outside for you somewhere, and you're going to find it over the next few weeks, and it's going to mean something, then you'll go and find one, right? Now, I didn't plant a penny there. But if you prime someone's mind to go looking for something, then it will validate that through attention. So for the two people who've asked that question, my question to you is, how do you know what are you seeing, what are you experiencing when it's the opposite of the thing you're afraid of? And I used, how do you know when someone's engaged? Identify those characteristics. And then that's the thing that you want to put in front of you. That's the thing you go looking for, and you almost point score yourself. You go 1, 2, smile, laugh, and you point score it, right? And again, you'll find it hard to hold on to anxiety when you're noticing all of these positive affirmations. Did another question come up? I saw some text appear.
Did you?
Take one more. I think it's the one at the bottom there. How can I
make friends with my course mates who I've never met? That's true. I mean, I was just listening to what you were saying there, thinking actually you could apply that in this situation as well, apart from the facial expressions. So what more could you suggest if you can't actually see that person?
Yeah. So again, there's probably a few underlying things there that I'm a bit curious about. One of them is perhaps about confidence. I'm sort of sensing a lack of confidence in the question, because it sort of suggests that there's not something that what would seem natural to someone is that you can pretty much relate to anyone through a basic conversation, but it sounds like there's perhaps an obstacle there. So I guess there's a thing I perhaps maybe hook back into here, which is to remind that person that they are, so 100%, they are not the only person who feels that feeling and thinks those thoughts, right? And so we're surrounded by fellow strugglers and allies of our issues, so the direction I'm going to go in here is I'm sensing a lack of confidence through a kind of an assumption that this person is the only person in the situation that they're finding themselves in, and it's quite rare for me to do this, but I'm going to urge that person to go grabbing hold of any confidence that they might have in any topic, and go looking for the people who are just as concerned about that as they are, because those people exist. And it's, it's a funny thing. Peter Kay said this first, the comedian Peter Kay. It's a great point he made about doing his comedy. He said, the hardest thing about doing what I do is showing up. And it's basically getting to the microphone and doing his opening line. And once he's in, when I do presentation coaching, I talk about this. I talk about rehearse your first 10 seconds, right? And then the rest will take care of itself. Your unconscious mind is a brilliant thing. And the words will come out. And in most cases, they'll come out in the right order. So my guidance to that person is, keep in mind, there's other people who think and feel the same. The hardest thing about that is going to be showing up. But if you can get there and you can open your mouth, the rest will just happen naturally. And, I can pretty much put a promise to you on that basis. So I think we're probably going to have to call it there, which is a shame. I'm enjoying myself tonight.
I know this always happens with us, is that we carry on. But I think we're going to have to draw this session to a close. I'm just going to do a few shout outs to people that I know are on this session. So I'm just going to say thank you for attending: Tom Clarkson, Tash the Maker, Emily Griffiths, Kevin Henderson, Olivia Anant, Rose90, and Natalie Reed. Guys, I hope this has been helpful for you. Please let us know any feedback or let us know how you got on. And of course, if you want to know more as well, please also head over to Mindbox, which is mind-box.co.uk. But in the meantime, thank you for attending this evening and enjoy the rest of your festival.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.